Cool. All right. So we have one more question. We're out of time on that one, but I just turned off the alarm. So this comes from Joseph Ferrer, and he says, "Hello, NVC Cast. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Can't wait for every episode. Here's my question. It's no secret that a lot of people want a new Metroid. But time and time again, we've heard developers that say they don't have plans to do one at all. First of all, to that point, I don't know if anyone's really said a new Metroid isn't happening. Just Retro has said, we're not telling you what we're working on. There's a big difference there. But maybe he means prior examples. Anyway, so Nintendo's also in a tight spot with the Wii U. Big games like Mario 3D World and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze struggled to boost sales. We all know that the Metroid series, as amazing as it is and how much praise it's gotten, has never sold as much as other Nintendo franchises. My question is, will putting a Metroid on Wii U help Nintendo or hurt them even more?"
God, it will help, of course. You know, if you think about it, I mean, it depends on what it looks like, right? If it is a 2D side-scroller, even if it's beautiful, I don't think it will reach mass success. If it is a first-person shooter-looking game with great controls, beautiful graphics, yeah, of course it's going to help, because it will tell people who have written the Wii U off as another Wii, it will help them see that it is a powerful console and it has games that they want to play, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't just need that. It needs a special new hook, something that like hasn't been done yet, or it can't just be. Metroid Prime was special because, okay, yeah, it took Metroid and made it a 3D game, and that had never been done before, but you know, first-person shooters are so common right now, and that perspective is something that everyone is adapted to. Even the platforming aspects of it, that whatever the next Metroid is, it needs a special something that gets people talking.
Doesn't everybody who cares about Metroid already have a Wii U?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Like,
you think
it's
so?
not going to sell anymore.
I was going to say the exact same thing. It is completely preaching to the choir.
But what if it's
if you wanna hook
gorgeous
in
and
the
people
same-
go like, oh, okay.
Well,
you
that
can
didn't
get
really
a cool
do-
sci-fi shooter, because there hasn't been a Halo yet, you know, like on the Xbox One, for example.
Sure.
There was a Titanfall.
Yeah.
There'll be about 12 Halos
But
on
Titanfall
Xbox
is a
One
competitive online game. It's not a kind of a story-driven, campaign-based game.
Sure.
Like, if they showed off a Metroid that looked as nice as the last Halo, I think they would turn some heads. Don't you think it would bring in some new people?
No, a new Metroid game would just be fan service to the people who are already there. Like that, it'd be like a loyalty reward, basically.
Yeah, I don't think the people who bought the Wii that they want to try and bring back even know what Metroid is.
It's like
a new franchise.
Metroid coming to Wii U is like if Amazon emailed me and they're like, "Hey, you've loved us for so long. Here's $10." That's what that is. No one's signing up for Amazon Prime because you might get $10 a couple.
I don't know.
years later.
I think that I mean I kind of agree with both sides of this conversation, but I do think that the influencers and the people who get excited about games when they see something like Metroid, and maybe they do own a Wii U, but they're also the people that are going to be talking about it and going to be telling their friends about it and saying, "Yo, this is serious business." Now, granted, though, Metroid Prime was a gorgeous game, and it sold well, but it didn't. I guess I just want to say it didn't really blow the door. It was one of the best-looking games of its time in terms of the technology and the way it looked, but it didn't really blow the doors off sales-wise for the games that Retro has made.
None of them were sales. I mean, none of them were sales failures, right?
Yeah.
They all did well, but they were also first-person shooters that launched in a crowded market. They were, you know, on the GameCube, it was very competitive visually. It looked awesome, right? But it was also a time where people already started talking about multiplayer games, right? And even though we didn't want a Metroid game as a GoldenEye multiplayer experience, that is that one bullet point that first-person shooter fans were looking for in the box, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's this weird. It also has this art style. I think that's very, you know, if you're into Japanese animation and giant robots and all that, like that game will definitely appeal to you. But if you're into World War II or Modern Warfare and that kind of stuff, it's different, right?
Yeah.
So
when Modern Warfare took over, like that whole current like look for like first-person shooters, that became the standard pretty much.
But I mean, Titanfall is a hit. It's not an Xbox One seller, right?
No.
And people are not rushing out, and it hasn't propelled Xbox One into the number one position. You could argue that it's also out on 360 and PC, so some of that wind was taken out of the sales.
Split, to sell a first-person shooter nowadays, sadly, you need to be synonymous with some of the most incredible visual fidelity on the market. That is where that audience is. They want this insane, robust online, and they want the best-looking stuff in the world, and the Wii U can provide neither of those things. Add to the fact that the last...
I don't agree with that at all.
What?
No.
Like, if you look at Mario Kart, it looks pretty damn good, don't you
Not
think?
for what a first-person shooter fan wants to see.
Right.
No, but outside of that, I mean, it still boils down to, let me turn this off, it still boils down to art direction, and it still boils down to, like, how well, what is the new gameplay hook that's going to get people excited? And I think that will help determine if the game is a successful yes or not. I don't know if necessarily...
I'm playing like the devil's advocate here.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But yes, I will buy a Metroid game the moment it comes out, and I will buy a first-person Metroid game even quicker. But most first-person shooter fans do not want hyper-stylized, cartoony or even like sci-fi futuristic thing.
Sure. But I don't think the power argument always rears its ugly head, right? In any genre conversation we have when we bring up Wii U versus other platforms. But I still think that the power difference, and someone will probably correct me for this or scream at me for it, but I don't think it's that huge, and I don't think it's that big of a factor. Whereas with Wii, it was, and we've talked about this before. Wii was ugly. Wii was last gen. I do
think it's a factor. I think it's the reason why we're not getting the new Batman game.
But what are you seeing on Sony or Microsoft right now that is really pushing that graphics
particle
envelope?
effects, scope, set pieces, things that like just cannot be done on that level without scaling it back.
I just don't find it as overwhelming or as amazing as I may have thought.
Right, because you're not the predominant first-person shooter audience.
What are you talking about? I play Titanfall every weekend.
Right, but you play everything else too.
I try.
You're not one of those. Like, if I only bought an Xbox One for Titanfall, am I going to buy a Wii U for Metroid Prime 4?
Look, I mean, the Arkham games are open world games.
Yeah.
And, the moment you want to push a big open world with a lot of particle effects and a lot of stuff going on, that's a lot of memory usage, so on top of everything. Whereas Metroid is still a corridor confined game. You're not walking out onto a giant planet with lots of people walking around, and, it's not Watch Dogs. Yeah. By the way, Watch Dogs, that's going to be interesting to see how the Wii U version stacks up.
If the Wii U version
will not stack up.
We'll see. It's coming, right? And so that'll be interesting. But I do think Nintendo's always been really good at creating games that play to their hardware strength.
Sure.
And
they do.
Galaxy was a great example where the levels were smaller. And despite everything being low standard def, it looked really gorgeous, right?
Right.
And even if you just took that game and rezzed it up, it would look really competitive.
So what they need to do with this is they need to go in the complete opposite direction of everything that I'm saying of what a first-person shooter fan wants, and they have to look for a new group of people. Because if they've tried making Metroid a online multiplayer competitive shooter,
yeah, but that wasn't retro. That was NST. There's more factors I think there than that.
Metroid Prime 2 had multiplayer.
Yeah, and that was a mistake.
Yeah, it was a mistake. Metroid Prime 3 had generic soldiers barking orders at you. Metroid Other M, which is the ugly elephant in the room, which is the last time we saw this franchise, left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
It did.
I love Metroid. I want to see Metroid come back. Metroid will not move units, and people will not buy Metroid now if they don't position it as something completely new.
So you know who's pissed at you right now?
What?
Everyone.
The baby.
The baby, exactly.
And the bottle ship.
And some other babies.
Thank God you didn't have to work on anything with Other M. You would have hated everything, Todd. I kid you not.